Hello! In this clip from our Justia webinar, PPC Advertising in the Legal Industry, Challenges and Opportunities, we will talk about the basics of PPC advertising, privacy concerns, and the ethical considerations you must take into account when running pay-per-click ads. Remember, if you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
So welcome to our presentation. Today, we're going to be talking about PPC advertising, specifically some of the challenges and opportunities as they apply to the legal industry. So, here at Justia, we have been working with lawyers and law firms on their paid advertising for several years. We have seen just about everything that you can imagine when it comes to Google search ads, the good, bad, and the ugly. So, today we want to go ahead and share with you some tips on how to deal with some of those common and recurring issues that tend to pop up when you're running Google ads, exciting new opportunities, especially how that applies in the world of AI, and share with you some of the great results that our own clients have seen running search ads for their firms. But first, I do want to do, a really brief overview of Google search ads, just make sure, we're all on the same page here. Hopefully, all of you were able to watch our PPC 101 webinar that my colleague Thomas and myself put on almost a year ago now, but that one basically covered all of the basics that you need to know for how to set up a successful ad campaign. I added the link at the bottom of the slide there, so if you want to check it out, please do. I don't want to rehash all of the details that we covered in that webinar today. So this is kind of your cue. If you are a beginner, if you don't know, those initial steps that you need to take to get your campaign set up, basically all of the basics, stop here. Check that out, come back. This one, we want to make sure that you have a better understanding of the setup of the search ads before we get into some of these issues that come up a little bit farther down the line. So, the things that we covered there, big one, setting up landing pages for each of your target practice areas. If you or your provider are sending your ads back to your main website, instead of a dedicated landing page, huge red flag. You want to stop there, rewind, don't worry about the stuff we're talking about today. You need to get that fixed up first. Another thing that we talked about was how law firms should be using phrase match keywords for all of their ads. You see that here. Vast majority of the ads that you run, you're going to be using phrase match. This is a really interesting example, though, because Google, as you can see in this second kind of box at the bottom of the screenshot, Google's equating the target keyword divorce lawyer with somebody's name. So Ted over here is getting picked up for a general, divorce lawyer target. Obviously, this is not the kind of search that you want to trigger your ad when you're going after someone who's, just looking for a divorce lawyer. So remember this slide. We're going to come back to it in a little bit more detail when we talk about the different challenges that advertisers face, specifically the ethical issues that arise as a result of this functionality on Google's end. So before, we cover those ethics issues, I'm going to let Jessica take over and cover some of the specific privacy issues that pop up time and time again when you're running Google ads.
Thanks, Samantha, and thank you all again for joining us today. So of the challenges that we're going to be covering, we're going to first look at privacy concerns. And this has to do a lot with the data of users, particularly their behavior and their interests. So as I'm sure you've all experienced at some point, you're scrolling through your social media feed or you're going through your email inbox and something that you were looking at like maybe a day or two ago or a week ago pops up. So maybe it's a resort somewhere that you were thinking about taking a vacation. Maybe it's a kitchen gadget, something that caught your eye when you were looking for new espresso makers. When it happens, you probably ask yourself, what the heck? It's just a little weird sometimes. But imagine if something like that happens for something a little bit more personal, like a dentist or an eye doctor, or even maybe a marriage counselor. Now, what about a divorce attorney or a bankruptcy lawyer? I mean, while personalized advertising, it could be a very strong tool for advertisers to reach the targeted audiences a little bit more effectively, there comes a point where it just becomes a little too intrusive for some. And even though it's permitted by certain social media platforms or certain e-commerce marketing platforms, Google is not one of them. So Google restricts sensitive interest categories in personalized ads. And of these, most of the restrictions that we see have to do with personal hardship policy principles. Say that fast 5 times in a row. But it makes sense. Mostly everyone that's looking for a lawyer is experiencing personal hardship or knows someone that has been experiencing a personal hardship. So personal hardships include health conditions, treatments, procedures, or personal failings, struggles, traumatic experiences. You cannot target users based on these types of hardships. Now, while I completely agree with Google on this, at the same time, I do have to point out that it poses a huge obstacle for legal marketers. Personalized advertising, yes, it leads to higher engagement rates, which translates into increased returns. But even if certain advertising platforms allow it, it still might be best to err on the side of caution. And this is just because the current rulings and laws in place, they're not very consistent and they still leave a lot of questions unanswered. However, Google does make it pretty clear that personalized advertising, such as remarketing, using personal hardships is just off limits. It's not allowed. But running RSAs or responsive search ads is allowed, just with some limitations. So RSAs are the text ads that show up on a page of results. They now have the label of sponsored. They used to be labeled as ads. So here we see 2 ads for a car accident lawyer, and both are still eligible to run. However, they're flagged with the health and personalized advertising policy, and they're being limited. So we asked Google for a little bit more information as far as why these particular ads were flagged. And we were told that personal injuries are regarded as a health condition. They wrote to us, kindly note that the eligible limited status is the correct status for these types of promotions. This ensures that the ads will serve where they're prohibited or where they're permitted and not in locations where prohibited. So basically, as long as you're seeing impressions, your ads are serving. Okay, great. Well, what does that really mean as far as, the limited? Give me a little bit more information. So we have heard a couple of different things from different Google reps on this. Some have told us that it is, it means that the ads won't be shown to minors, so anyone under 18. So, if they're logged into their Google account, Google has their information, they won't be shown these types of ads. Some other reps have told us, hey, it's just a label, it's a flag, it's just to let you know that you can't do other types of advertising for these types of personal hardships and health conditions, in this case, a car accident, personal injury. So we can conclude that mentioning a health condition within ad text is okay. However, targeting based on that specific condition is not. The eligible limited status, it also applies to other sensitive areas though, such as negative financial status and relationship hardships. So as we can see here, it's an ad for a bankruptcy lawyer. It's flagged for, negative financial status. And here we see a couple of ads for a divorce lawyer. Now, it is a bit strange that one's flagged and one isn't. And then the one that is flagged, you can see we also had submitted an appeal because it said it violated or it implied the commission of a crime. But I don't think a divorce implies the commission of a crime. But the next ad here does. So this is an ad for a DUI lawyer. So Google uses a mixture of their AI and human evaluation to detect and remove ads that it thinks violate policies. So it's not always perfect, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. On a related note to not always perfect, have you ever received an email from Google that your remarketing lists have been disabled. But you're not even remarketing, you're not alone. So what happens is Google will automatically create remarketing audience lists, or what are now called your data segments. They've changed a few times, I think. And these lists are based on the visitors to your site. And again, these lists or data segments, they're automatically generated. So even if you don't actively engage with remarketing, you don't plan to, you're still going to receive a notification about how your lists are violating Google's personalized advertising policy. So as you can see, the lists are in violation due to health in personalized advertising and commission of a crime in personalized advertising. So this particular lawyer had campaigns running for injury and another for criminal law. Now, what about this notification? I'm sure most of you running your own ads have seen this one before. What customer match is, it's a feature in Google where they allow you to upload your customer information or your client information. So this is their first name, their last name, their phone number, their email address, country and zip code. I think those are the other fields that you can upload too. And it allows you to re-engage or re-advertise with them across search or Gmail, YouTube, the display network, etc. So as you've already guessed, this clearly would violate Google's personalized advertising policies. And possibly even some ethics rules, which leads us to our next advertising challenge, ethical considerations.
That's right. So ethical considerations are a huge factor that firms need to take into account when they're running ads. These are going to vary from state to state. So it's really important that you know the rules that apply to you in the place where you advertise. We're going to go through and kind of highlight a few different examples here. This first one is a big one. We have a screenshot from the North Carolina bar. It's a formal ethics opinion that's basically prohibiting lawyers from bidding on another lawyer's name as part of their ad targets. So although targeting another attorney's name is something that Google allows, that doesn't mean that it's ethical, especially if you're in North Carolina. So remember this slide from earlier. This is the firm that's targeting the keyword divorce lawyer using phrase match keywords. So that means technically your ad should only be triggered when the query has the same meaning as your target keyword. In this case, Google decided that the name Ted Retchell is equal to divorce lawyer, allowing the firm's ad to show for this, what would otherwise be considered a pretty irrelevant search. But this is an example from Florida. But if this was happening to a firm in North Carolina, you can see where, the ethical implications could be pretty concerning. So even though, the firm isn't intentionally targeting this attorney's name, if this was happening in North Carolina, Ted could, be doing a search for his own name, see this ad pop up, and file a complaint with the bar. So, even if this isn't an ethical issue in your state, it is something that we see pretty frequently with folks using phrase match keywords. It's a good reason that you should check your search terms report on a regular basis, and definitely want to update your negative keyword lists on a regular basis to try and keep some of these queries from triggering your ad. So the next example we're going to look at here is from the Florida bar advertising rules. So in Florida, lawyers are required to include their firm name and location somewhere within their advertising as a whole. So, I work with a lot of firms in Florida. We have some folks who are super, super vigilant about this, and they put their name and location in the actual ad text for every single ad that they run. If you actually look at some ads that are running in Florida, not everybody's doing this. The rule basically, is not specific to the ad text that's showing on the search results page. If you have your name and location listed on the landing page where your ads are being linked to, that's going to cover you for this particular rule. Additionally, Florida has some of their own rules when it comes to targeting other attorneys and firm names with your ads. So while it is allowed in Florida, unlike the North Carolina example we looked at earlier, there are some guidelines that you need to follow in order to stay in the good graces of Florida's ethics rules. So I linked a blog post here by Eric Goldman. It outlines the issue perfectly for Florida in particular. The basic gist is that, while you can buy another lawyer or law firm's name in the ads interface as a Florida firm, you cannot use their name in the actual ad text without clearly indicating that the lawyer or firm that you're targeting is not affiliated with the advertiser, which would be you. So there is this kind of safe harbor for including the advertiser's name as the ad's first text. And as you can see here, just an example of using the responsive search ad setup, using this pinning feature is going to ensure that that labeling requirement that is set out by the state ethics rules is being taken care of. One thing to note, though, is if you are pinning headlines, you're most likely going to see your ad strength suffer a little bit. It's, in our experience, almost impossible to get either good or excellent ad strength score when you're using that pinning feature. The reason being is that it limits the number of combinations that Google has to work with to create your ad. That's okay. Google specifically states in their, specifically states that the ad strength rating itself is not a factor when it comes to the auction and the ad serving. Ad strength is just a way for Google to provide feedback on how well your ad is set up. So in other words, this is purely a feedback mechanism to help other advertisers or to help advertisers produce better creative for their ads. If you get a poor score due to, this requirement by the state bar to pin certain information, have that always show up in your ads, it's not going to impact the actual performance of those ads. Last example that we're going to look at here is coming to us from the state of New Jersey. So if you check out number 3 here, lawyers are prohibited from making statements that compare the lawyer's services with another lawyer's services. So this means that you need to pay attention to your use of superlatives, such as super or best. And this goes for, your ad text, your landing page content, the assets that you have set up, all of that. Because that kind of language can come across as a comparison, which is violating this ethics ruling. So, overall, just the kind of point that we're getting at is that at the end of the day, it's really imperative you need to know where your state bar stands on these unique advertising issues. Once you have all that sorted out, it of course doesn't end there.
We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.